Hey, before we dive into this episode, I have a favor to ask. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or the follow button if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. This really helps us reach more people so we can have a bigger impact. Now let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Whitby, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by one of our clients, Alec Borlin. Alec is a CPA turned recruiter. He started his career with one of the world's largest recruiting and staffing companies before starting his own firm, BGC Search, in 2022. Alec places accounting and finance professionals with privately held middle market companies in the greater Cleveland area. Alec recently launched the Recruiter CPA, which provides bookkeeping and tax services for recruiting and staffing companies. All right, welcome, Alec. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Mark. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So you probably know the first question that's coming up because I ask almost everybody this. How did you get into recruiting?
Yeah, so it's a similar story. A lot of people have probably already heard, so I'll try to stick to the cliff notes, but I ultimately fell into recruiting. So I am CPA, public accountant by trade. I was working at one of the bigger public accounting firms here in Cleveland at the time, and I was a tax guy. I didn't mind the long hours. It was really more of the type of work that I was doing at the time that I really just didn't align with. So when I thought about moving into a different position, I wanted to do something that was going to leverage all of my education and experience to that point. I spent all that time getting the CPA, learning all the accounting laws and regulations. And so I was like, okay, what can I do that's going to kind of make sure that this wasn't a waste of 5 years? So I thought originally I was going to go and do software sales for accounting software, Sage Intacct, if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be a pretty easy transition, but I was super entry level at the time, and I didn't have a ton of sales experience. I cold called CIOs for my dad's company, which we can dive into. That's a fun topic. But outside of that, I had no real sales experience, and they were based in California, so they weren't ready to fly an entry level guy out there. And so ultimately, I was talking with one of my managers in public accounting at the time that I was really close with. He was talking to a recruiter, and so I asked him, "Hey, do they place like salespeople or anything like that?" And so they ended up getting me in touch with the firm I would end up going to work for. But it took me a couple of conversations with them to really kind of see how it would transition well. But ultimately, he was able to sell me on it. And so that brings us to how I kind of fell into it ultimately.
Fantastic. So, yeah, it's a familiar story, but it's always good to hear anyway. Circle back. Tell me about your dad's business and how you got some early exposure to sales through that.
Yeah, so this was it was a blessing in disguise really, because it kind of gave me the thick skin to be able to make the cold calls that the job requires. So my dad had a data storage solutions company. So the best way I can describe it is, you obviously know what the cloud is, right? I think most people know what the cloud is. They would sell and maintain storage solutions for the equipment that would that would manage the cloud. So, there was a small company based here in Cleveland, but they had companies, or they had clients all around the world. And so what I would do was, I was really more of an inside sales type of role. If you think about that traditional corporate structure. And so they had a list for me in Excel, and it was a big list of CIOs. And so I would just pound the phones each day. I'd make like 20, 25 calls. And I would leave a lot of voicemails, but I would basically be trying to set up the VP of sales to have that meeting to see what their data storage needs looked like at the time.
When was this, Alec?
I did it, but between the time I was 17 and 18.
Wow, that's fantastic. Like early sales experience.
Yeah.
Like, did you get any sales training, or it was just kind of like dive into the deep end?
It was dive into the deep end. I had a script, and we went over the basics and what my mission was essentially, but a lot of it was just kind of trial and error, and a lot of it was this was navigating the gatekeepers at the time, but truthfully, it was a lot of voicemails as well.
So this is all adding up. So you've had some early experience of business and selling. Then you become a CPA. You spend some time in accounting, and yeah, I've seen how the dots connect to lead you to working as a recruiter within accounting. That all makes sense. So let's talk about your first job in an agency then, because I
Yeah.
believe you hit the Champions Club in your second full year, which was 2020
Yep.
in a brand new market where you didn't know anyone. So tell me about those first couple of years in agency world.
Sure. Yeah. So I made the transition initially, and within the first month or so, I was lucky and unlucky that I made my first placement. Unlucky in the sense that it was kind of a false advertising in a way of, hey, it's going to be this easy. But so my first 8 out of my first 12 months in my rookie year, I was the top rookie in my geography. They promoted me to team lead and moved me out to Phoenix, Arizona. That year was 2020. So I got there in January. We all know what happened in March. Fortunately, I was able to hit Champions Club despite being in, a new market. With COVID going on, I didn't know anybody. I ended up moving back to Cleveland, but I still worked the Phoenix market remotely from Cleveland. I hit Champions Club again, 2021. And so after that, that's when I kind of, not to jump the gun here, that's when I ended up launching and starting BGC Search in Cleveland, 2022.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to obviously spend the majority of our time talking about that. But before we do, like, first of all, what is Champions Club? I mean, I can guess what it
Yeah.
entails, but what was the criteria in your firm?
So at the time, Champions Club, I think it was anywhere over 260 or 270,000. And so there were levels. All Stars was over 500,000. Champions Club was right there. And so as long as you hit that threshold, you were in there.
Got it. And what you said you made your first placement in your first month. You were top rookie in the first year. What was your approach? Like, what was your mindset, and or what was your approach to making sure that you performed?
I think it's so cheesy to say, but it came down to the daily actions. So for me, during that first year, I was up at 4:30 in the morning. I was at the gym at 5. I was in the office at 7. I was always trying to plan at the end of each day so that I knew what I was doing the next day. And I was always trying to do at least 10 interviews a week and at least 3 client meetings a week. So for me, it was really just a matter of I wanted to get to a point of sustainability as quickly as I could because I was very fortunate. Cleveland was a great office, Phoenix was a great office. So I got exposed to big billers early on in my career. And just by osmosis, being in the office a lot of the time, I kind of picked up on the habits that they were doing. So I would always try to replicate that, if not do more. So it was really just a matter of knowing what I needed to do, asking the questions when I wasn't sure, and then hitting what I said I was going to do and keeping myself accountable.
Okay, awesome. Alec, where does that focus and that discipline come from? Because what you just described is like, ask any recruiter with more than years experience. They know what to do, right?
Yeah.
But getting ourselves to follow through and to be disciplined, to be focused, and do the right daily activities, that is a daily personal challenge. So
Yeah.
where does that come from, and how did you get yourself to create that focus?
I think part of it's definitely who we are. I think there's a certain element of it that you can't change. You kind of just have that gene or you don't. Because even it's not easy to do even today. Like it's still being somebody who's seasoned. It's like it's still it's a lot of focus. It's a lot of effort to do it. But ultimately, I think if you make it easier on yourself to do what you need to do each day, you will do it. And so if you make a plan in terms of what your focus is going to be on, if you have a relative structure of what you're going to do hour by hour, then it's going to be easier instead of looking at the day as this, okay, I need to land a new client. I need to match this perfect candidate for the open search that I have. If you can just it's that concept of making a list and breaking down the big picture into small little actionable items, it will make it a lot easier to do. And so I believe that once you start moving and taking action, the focus and the commitment becomes easier because progress is something that ultimately gets us more excited, right? Because it's a lot to look at a mountain that you have to climb, but once you start climbing it, it's that much more exciting. And so it's kind of it's weird how it works that way. Like you get the motivation once you actually start taking the little action steps.
Great. I like that description. That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned obviously having a plan. How long do you typically spend planning for the next day?
I guess it kind of depends on the priorities that you have going on. Like if you have 5, 10 different searches going on versus if you're at like 0 to 3, because obviously in that regard, you kind of know where you need to shift your priorities. But I would say I try to block out an hour on my calendar, bare minimum. Now it might just take me 30 minutes, and this is at the end of the day. So it could be 4:30, it could be 5, depends on what my schedule looks like. And then similarly, I have on my calendar blocked out 9 to 11 as outbound activity. And I try to just stick to whatever's on my calendar. That's what I do. Now, if something comes in where it's like, hey, we're going to close this deal, or if it's something at the final stages, I'm willing to make an exception. But we've kind of got to stay committed to taking the action that we need to in that time that we have.
All right. I like it. So 4:30 to 5:30 is planning time, 9 to 11 is outbound activity time. You mentioned planning sort of hour by hour. Do you like block out time? Like, do you block out every hour of the day, or do you like how loosely or how what does that look like?
So I'm a nerd for this process stuff. So I love this. So what I like to do is I combine Asana, writing down what I need to do, pen and paper, and then my calendar. So what I'll do is I like to look at the beginning of the week what major rocks I need to move forward. I will try to assign a time of how long I think that is going to take me to do, and then I will put that on my calendar for that assigned amount of time. So this way I'm kind of looking at, hey, this is my highest priority item. It's going to take the least amount of time. That's something I'm going to try to knock out first versus this is a nice to do. It's going to take me 30 minutes. Let's just put it at the end of the week or like end of the day. So I try to write down this specific task, how long it's going to take, put it on my calendar and do that. But I keep everything organized in Asana so that it doesn't slip my mind because we all know like you can write something down in a notebook and then you lose said notebook or that page in the notebook and it's gone forever.
Right. Okay, this is great stuff. So I love it. You're actually blocking out time for those high priority items. And this doesn't surprise me, Alec, about you because I know that when you're going through our program, you're someone who's implemented a tremendous amount, and we have been really impressed with what you have achieved in the relatively short time we've been working together. And you just seem to like you get shit done and implemented, which is the ROI is in the implementation, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, understanding the strategy or knowing what to do is great, but then you actually have to physically do it.
Yeah.
And you're someone who, you know, you're the poster boy for that for sure.
Thank you for
You
saying
mentioned
that.
well, it's true. It's true. You mentioned Asana.
Yeah.
So this is an online project management tool that we use in our company as well. If you're not familiar, if people listening are not familiar, then you may have seen ads from Monday.com. They spend a lot of money on advertising. So that's a popular one. Trello is one of the older sort of Kanban board style project management tools, but it's a great way, especially if you have really any team, but I think even more the case if you have a remote team, a way that everybody can see what the big projects are, who's been assigned to what the deadlines are, and can collaborate together in real time, and you don't lose track of anything. Now, are you saying you also use it for your own personal task list, or?
I use it as much as I can, Mark. Asana is it's obviously not sponsored by them, but it's super cool because you can have your main task, like your overarching goal or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and then it allows you to assign those specific subtasks. So that's where it's like, hey, I'm trying to implement this SOP that allows me to chase jobs utilizing my hiring toolkit, right? So I'm going to create, here's what I need, here's each subtask that I need to do in order to make this thing a reality. But then you can also host your SOPs in there. Now I don't, I host my SOPs in just a Google Doc for my VA. Um, but it's a great way to keep it managed, break it down so that it's very easy to understand. And I have it broken out. I have it, hey, here's the personal stuff that I need to do, like in my everyday life. And then I have my company's, here's what I'm doing, here's what needs to get done as well.
Yeah. We could geek out on this.
I know.
I do something similar. So because you have different teams, and then within each team you have different projects, and then within each project you can have task lists, and then you can have subtasks, and you can add attachments, media, videos, as you say, SOP docs. You can create templates. You can have tasks that recur, or even whole projects that recur. And so I have stuff so one of my teams is personal, and that's private to me. Obviously, my team doesn't access that, but then most of the other projects are available for the whole team to collaborate. So, look, we might circle back to this because I'm really interested in how you organize yourself. But I want to move on with the hearing your journey, Alex. So, in 2020, when did you launch BGC Search?
2022 was the
Okay,
official go live.
perfect. And so, what inspired that? Because you're doing well, you're getting promoted. Why go through the? I mean, it's stressful, and there's a ton more. I mean, there's enough work being a recruiter, right? It's a lot. It's a tough job, and then when you're the owner as well, then you've just added about 20 other responsibilities to your list. So, what motivated you to do that?
20 other responsibilities you didn't even know exist.
Right.
But we're going to come full circle again here. So, like I mentioned earlier, I worked in my dad's company most of my life. Like, whether I was helping with shipping and packaging or working on the machines themselves in the back, moving them around, I grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. My dad and my uncle started in the attic of my childhood home. So it was really cool as a kid, like walking around 7, 8, seeing them doing that. It was awesome. So for me, I knew at one point, even when I left public accounting, Mark, I knew whatever field I was going to go into, I wanted it to be something that allowed me to be entrepreneurial, which is really what attracted me a lot to recruiting as well. Even working for a company, you can be highly entrepreneurial. So at one point, I knew I was going to try and fly my own flag. And in 2022, you're so right. Everything was going really well for me. A lot of family and friends are like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, life seems pretty awesome for you right now." And at the time, it just felt right. I didn't have a lot of external responsibilities, and the market was really good. As we all knew, 2022 went on to be fantastic. So it was the time to try. I was working the Phoenix market technically for 2.5 years or so before that point. So from a non-compete standpoint, from a geographical standpoint, there were really no conflicts. So it was the perfect time, perfect scenario, and I just decided to go for it.
Fantastic. So, what was that first year like, was it was it what you expected, or were there any surprises?
It went well. Again, 2022 was such a good year, so it was a great year to start a business. The big surprises were really just like being a CPA. I had an idea of what running a business would be like, having worked with entrepreneurs and helping them from a bookkeeping tax perspective. But then getting in there and looking at the headaches of tax compliance, uh, doing the accounting for myself for my own firm, handling the marketing, making sure the firm was well known, getting all the IT set up, making sure that my computer wasn't going to get hacked. and building a brand that for me, it was important. I didn't want to be known as the face of the business, right? I was young when I started it. So I've been working with CFOs since I was, 23, 24. And it's important for me to be taken seriously because again, when I'm working a CFO search, if I'm working with the CEO, if I'm working on high level director searches, working with the CFO, there's just a certain thing to it where I want them to make sure that they're comfortable that I know what I'm talking about when we're recruiting these high level people. So I'm not listed as founder. I'm not listed as CEO. It's probably not hard to find out that I own BGC Search, but like I tried to make it somewhat hard for me. So building a brand like that was a big challenge. And like trying to create an organization with a front face, you don't think about those marketing aspects when you're working with a big firm. They handle all that stuff for you. They handle everything else. They handle the billing. They handle, again, the accounting, the tax work, all of that stuff in the background that you take for granted and you don't really have to worry about.
Absolutely, 100%. I see on LinkedIn. Oh, by the way, if you're not already following Alec on LinkedIn, then definitely do so. We're going to come on to content marketing and generating inbound leads in this conversation. But Alec does a fantastic job of that. So definitely follow him and check out what he's posting. Yeah, so you're listed as senior executive recruiter at BGC Search. So that aligns with what you just shared. You've probably heard the expression that your life is a reflection of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Wouldn't it make sense to choose your peer group and put yourself in an environment with like-minded business owners who understand exactly what you're going through and have achieved the same kinds of goals that you want to achieve yourself? Here's your opportunity. Join me and my team at the Recruitment Coach Live Summit, October 9th and 10th in St. Petersburg, Florida. The quality of people in the room is phenomenal. There'll be folks with 20 years experience in the business, plus several million-dollar billers and high six-figure billers. There'll even be people who have multi-million-dollar recruitment businesses. What they all have in common is their commitment to constantly improving, learning, and growing. And what's unusual is that they're willing to share their knowledge and insight with each other, including you. A lot of recruiters are quite secretive about what they're doing. I know when I was coming up as a recruiter, we were taught the competition is the enemy, right? But this group has an abundance mindset and understand the benefit of sharing knowledge and best practices so that we can all get better. To learn full details and register, visit recruitmentcoach.com/summit. So let's then dive into that topic because I think it's one we're both passionate about, Alec. And I think in the first quarter of this year, you billed over $100,000 all from inbound leads. Can you talk about what actually went into achieving that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this was really cool to see because it was one of those where I put in a lot of time and didn't see anything. I saw hints. I saw whispers of something coming back to me, but it ended up from inbound leads alone. And I described that as a client reaching out to me saying, "Hey, we have a need." We billed $104,250, I think. And one of those inbound leads ended up being my biggest placement with BGC Search. It was $41,250. So
Nice.
what went into that was 12 months of consistently posting on LinkedIn and not seeing a result, right? So that was, it was posting videos. It was posting copy. So just words, just word posts, posting images, carousels, and constantly trying to interact with my audience and give them the insights that they're looking for. And you can't really know that. You can't know when a lead's going to come in from inbound in that regard. All you can do is continue to post and try to provide value to the people that are in your network. And then eventually you'll get this random beautiful message, "Hey, we have this need." But the signs that it was kind of working was whenever I would interact with people on the phone or even just in the messaging or even emails on top of that, Mark, I was starting to get signs of, "Hey, love your content, by the way. Hey, love your post today, by the way. Hey, I really resonated with that, by the way." And so when I was starting to get those, I was like, okay, this is making my cold outreach a little warmer because like they have some degree of knowledge of who I am. and that they're kind of following my journey. And that's what it ultimately culminated at the beginning of this year in getting those searches, filling them. And now I'm not saying that we're getting inbound leads all the time. Again, it's just the organic conversations that come from posting the content on a day-to-day basis. And cut me off at any point if you want to keep going here further there, Mark. But for me, my whole thing is I want to add value in whatever I'm doing. That goes back to whatever job I've been doing, right? When I was working for my dad, when I was in public accounting, I was raised to leave situations in a better place than I found them. And for me, the best way to do that is to add value. So in my posts, I try to give my take from my perspective, because that's the only thing I'm qualified to talk about on. You see a lot of people posting the same kind of regurgitated content where they're almost like yelling at employers, right? They're like, it's always the hiring process is broken. Stop having more than 5 interviews. Are you working on site? Are you hybrid? Allow more flexibility. Anyone can say that. I think it's if you tap into your own personal experiences, the conversations that you're having on a day-to-day basis, there is gold in there for you to kind of decipher with your unique experience so far and then translate it into a way that people want to consume and people will get value from. Because with the amount of content and media going out in today's world, people are looking for shortcuts for questions that they have. And in our arena of, hiring, we're able to provide insights that not a lot of other people are.
For sure. I love what you're saying, Alec, and I agree 100%. It's something we teach, but actually, you were already doing this before you and I crossed paths. And in fact, I think we may have found each other on LinkedIn. I don't remember how we first got together, but it's so true. Like getting inbound leads is not something you can really predict or guarantee. It will happen in time if you're consistent, right? But the key that you mentioned is it actually amplifies your cold outreach, right? So if you connect with someone on LinkedIn, they're going to start seeing your content in their news feed, right? Which makes you more familiar to them. We all know about people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? And so, you've maybe connected on LinkedIn or send them a cold direct message or an in-mail. If they connect with you, they start seeing your content. If you call them at that point, it's that familiarity that they already, as you say, it warms up the call. Not only that, I love your philosophy about adding value and leaving every situation better than you found it, because when you're leading with value, you are going to stand out from the majority of other recruiters in your space, right? And it's almost that inducing the law of reciprocity. You're putting value out there, and you know you're probably helping people who you may never speak to. In fact, not probably, I'm sure you're helping a lot of people, and people are enjoying and finding value in what you're sharing. And you're making other people's lives better, even the people who you'll never place or you'll never recruit for. But some of that is going to come back to you. So what I'm interested in is, number one, you said it was a good 12 months of effort before you really, and you got early signs that this was having a positive impact. But before the leads started really flowing. So now, most people try something like 2 or 3 times. They'll post on LinkedIn and go, well, that didn't work. So that
Yep.
obviously is a
On to the
waste of
next
time,
one.
right?
Yeah.
And so, what was your thought process that allowed you to keep going and persist and trust that it would pay off?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. So I think it's the belief that LinkedIn is a place that will continue to be very important. We see Fortune 500 companies starting to develop their LinkedIn presence and marketing, if you will, on platforms like that. So just kind of trusting that there's people smarter than me investing their time and resources into the platform. It's just something that I believe to be true. And I also believe to be true that like it's the early signs that I were getting, it goes back to that belief that people want to do business with people. And something that I wanted to say, that I think is really what unlocks this. So if you're somebody who's trying to do content on LinkedIn, what really like changed the game for me is when I started adding my personal side to my content. Now, this is, you don't do it a lot. And when I got into your program, I was happy to see like you guys teach this as well. It's, you know, we want to do value and we want to be perceived as a thought leader in whatever it is that we're doing, but we want to be perceived as a human being as well. So you need to add the personal posts. You need to add the posts that are telling them about your story, your journey, why it is that you do what you do. And once I started adding those, number one, those posts get the most response out of any. But because of that, it amplifies everything else that you're putting out there. So that really technical value added post that you had is now going to be seen again by new people because of the fact that your personal post just kind of amplified everything else. So to answer your original question, it was just like following the fact that other people were investing and getting results from their time and effort into LinkedIn. But then like the linchpin is really like, hey, you need to add your personal element on top of the value posts.
I think I agree 100%. And I think people are, they don't want, they're scared to put themselves out there, right? And that is outside most people's comfort zone. And I think what people need to realize is it's actually, although you see tons of content on LinkedIn, the reality is it's a very small percentage of users on LinkedIn who actually do create content. Okay. So by being one of the few who make the effort and put themselves out there and, you know, bring value and also share some personal stuff and be relatable, be a real human being and not just, you know, another faceless recruiter, you are joining a very select group who are going to get a disproportionate share of the attention in your space. And so, you know, just knowing that that is available, that is possible, but it doesn't happen overnight. And it, you know, it's like, you know, you just have to keep that consistent effort going over time and you will generate those compound interest, you know, payoffs eventually. But that's the same with everything, Alec, right? Whether it's cold calling or anything you're doing, like you could get lucky and do cold calls and get a new search like on the first call, right? That could happen. But more likely, it's going to be a slog over days and weeks and months. And then you're calling, and then eventually you're calling back the same people you've already spoken to. You build a bit more rapport, and then you call again and you call again. And that's when it starts kind of really coming back to you, right? So, whereas if you do it for a day and you go, well, that sucked, I'd never want to do that again, then, you know, it's not going to work. So, that persistence over time, I think, has been huge. I'd love to know. So, how often are you posting on average?
I try to get one out every weekday. So Monday to Friday. I'll miss. Like the past couple weeks, I've been missing a lot. It happens. Like you have other things going on that like life's going to happen. There are people who use tools to schedule the posting. I think it's okay, but for me personally, I just when I'm writing it, and I love writing, I think writing, copywriting is a great tool for recruiters to have because we use it in so many different elements of our job. Um, but like when I'm writing it the day of, there's just something that it's, I don't know, a lot of them come out better at times. So I try to post every day. I take off the weekends. A lot of people post on the weekends. But I think it's find a schedule that works for you. If you want to, if you're just getting started, try to just do 2 days a week. Try to do 1 day a week. And don't overthink it. People are, if you make a bad post, no one's going to see it. No one's going to care, right? You're people are not going to be like, oh man, Alec posted that really shitty post on LinkedIn 2 months ago. Never going to work with him. Like, no, it's okay. No one cares. They're worried about their own problems. The one thing I wanted to say about all this too, I think it's important for people to know is most people are quiet consumers. So what I mean by that is they're reading your post, they're seeing it, they're not necessarily liking, certainly not commenting or sharing. So you'll see this because what will happen is once you talk to that person, reach out to them for whatever reason, they'll say, "Hey, I love your stuff, by the way." And I'll get that a lot. And I'm like, didn't even know you were looking at it. Great that you like it. So when you're not getting engagement, don't get discouraged.
I'm glad you shared that. That is so true. Yeah, people are noticing your content even if they didn't engage in it. So it's really interesting. So you write yours on a day-to-day basis, but what's your process for, you must already have ideas banked. Where do you capture your ideas so that, cuz you don't want to sit there and stare at a blank page or you know, try and make out what am I going to post about today. You need to have some kind of plan. So how does that work for you?
Love this. So a lot of my inspiration comes from the daily conversations that I have, or I'll just be in the gym. And I'll just be like, man, that's a great post. I should do that. So I will, whenever I get a hit of inspiration, I'll email it to myself. I'll throw it in trusty Asana. I need to formalize this more than I have it because it would simplify a lot of it. But I try to put it down somewhere electronically that I'm not going to use it. I do have a sheet in my Google Docs. Like I have like a marketing folder, right? I have my different pillars. I have sales and marketing, business operations, and then more general operations. So I will have a dedicated folder for LinkedIn post ideas. So a lot of times, whenever I'm hit with that, I will have a bank of, hey, here's a potential post. So on days where I come into it, I have no idea. I'll just go and I'll revisit some of those areas. Now, what I should do, and here's, I think I mentioned this in I think it was a marketing call that we do in the program. Um, but what I want to do and should do is I want to leverage AI to create my own personal copywriter. So what I would do is I would take and this I make it a point. I save all of my greatest hits to a folder in Google Docs. What I'm going to do is, and what I should do is load up those greatest hits, tell the AI what it's going to be doing, and create my own copywriter voice. And so this way I can come in on days that I don't have inspiration, say, hey, create a post for me using Alec's copywriting formula. And give me, or even say, give me 10 ideas that I could comment on today, or that I can make a post about today. So, this is something to systemize potentially in the future.
Yeah. So I love your creative thinking around this, Alex. So what you're talking about is creating your own GPT, essentially, right?
Yep.
Which is trained on your own content. And you could even tell it like who's the avatar that we're trying to reach, who's the audience, right? And you could give it the guidelines. You'd probably even want to give it words. So this was an idea I got from our mutual acquaintance and a lady who's very well liked in her program, Rebecca Hastings. She has developed a list that she uses in her prompts of when she's creating copy. It's a list of words and phrases to avoid. So in fact, if you search online, you can find articles about what are the phrases that give away that this is ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
That AI overuses compared to a real human being, and you can kind of like make sure that it doesn't sound like GPT, but still, we tell as you know, we teach how to leverage AI in recruiting, and you always still want to put it through your own human filter and insert your own personal example or take on it so that even if the AI does 80% of the heavy lifting for you, it's going to be unique to you and it's going to reflect your actual knowledge and experience, right?
Right. It's all about letting it, like you said, letting it do the heavy lifting. Let it start it for you. But then you've got to take it to completion. You've got to humanize it. AI is incredibly poetic when it comes to copywriting. Like the lists and phrases, I know exactly what you're talking about, but for whatever reason, they made it super, super poetic in the responses that it gives you. but I think that it goes back to that philosophy or, future thinking that AI will not replace humans. Humans who understand and work with AI will be more efficient than humans that do not leverage AI.
Right. 100%. All right. This is fascinating. So, I want to talk briefly about you. You are a super entrepreneurial guy, and you've actually launched another um, offering, which is recruitmentcpa.com, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yeah. So the
so
Recruiter CPA.
but the website is Recruitment CPA, I think, isn't it?
Yes,
Recruitmentcpa.com.
recruitmentcpa.com is the official website.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, got it. But it's the Recruiter CPA. So where did this idea come from, and what's it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Recruiter CPA is kind of this culmination of my experience so far, um, but done in a way where I've strategically partnered myself with a existing and I should say a successful existing accounting firm owner who specializes in small businesses and startups specifically. Which, when I look at, and I'm sure you can attest to this, when we look at the market in the staffing and recruiting world, there's a lot of people that are realizing like, hey, I can go and do this on my own. I don't necessarily have to work for a big company if I don't want to. So, with that, a lot of great recruiters aren't necessarily great business owners. Like myself, they don't understand what goes into running a firm, running a company in general, right? There's so much that goes into it, least of all accounting and taxation. So the Recruiter CPA is a accounting firm that specifically helps staffing and recruiting firm owners with their bookkeeping, accounting, tax strategy, and tax compliance work so that they could focus on what they do best, right? Which is growing the business, adding additional clients, and closing more placements. One thing that you guys teach a lot that I think everybody needs to look at is do what you do best and outsource the areas that you are not an expert. If we look at a staffing or recruiting firm owner, they're probably a big biller, which means their hourly rate is probably anywhere from $200 to $500 to $600 an hour. You should not be applying that bill rate to doing your own accounting or tax compliance and tax strategy work, right? Like the money that you will save money just by outsourcing it to a professional, but then you're also going to make more money by the sheer fact alone that you could focus on driving more revenue for your business, right? So the firm is, my role in it is really just to be a strategic advisor in working with the already existing accounting firm owner to come up with playbooks for staffing or recruiting firm owners on best practices to deal with those giant tax bills when you have a great year, but also deal with the feast or famine cycle of recruitment when you have a down year, right? Because it's incredibly hard to have a tax strategy in place when you go from billing 600K one year to 200K one year or 100K one year, right? So it's a very specific industry challenge that we deal with in the staffing and recruiting industry. And then of course, we help tackle the general bookkeeping stuff that, like, again, a $200 an hour rate on the small end shouldn't be doing. So it's something is very exciting for me to, again, be able to, share my expertise from the staffing and recruiting world with somebody in the accounting industry, and provide this service and be able to provide that value that I mentioned is very important to me to these staffing and recruiting firm owners. You guys are experts at helping businesses, staffing and recruiting firm owners grow their revenue. We're the experts at helping them grow it profitably. And a big piece of growing profitably is making sure that you have the right tax plan and accounting and reporting in place.
It's a genius idea, Alec, because this is the Achilles heel for most recruiters and business owners. We're not like yourself and a few others. Troy Ashby, our mutual friend, and one of our clients who's been on the podcast. There's a few recruiters who are CPAs or come from an accounting background, but the majority of recruiters, you know, uh, either A, don't have the knowledge, or B, don't like doing this type of work, or C, don't have the time. And as you say, even if you know how to do it, it doesn't mean it's the highest and best use of your time, right? The recruiter should be focused on billing. So it's a great idea. And I'm not aware, at least certainly I haven't come across many accounting practices that really understand recruitment and have that specialty. So
In doing
brilliant
the
idea.
research, Mark, there's really very few they're subdivisions, very small subdivisions of much bigger companies. But again, they don't have those people who have the experience running a firm. Is where we're trying to leverage, my background and understanding and just being a firm owner at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, this is a good segue to the kind of overall topic of the challenge of being either a solo recruiter or owner of a small recruiting practice where you do have so many competing demands on your time and things that you need to focus on. Can you talk to me about your experience with that challenge and how you've dealt with it?
In managing time around all the different competing interests, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, because look, when you run a desk for another firm, you've got uh there's still a lot to juggle if you're a 360 recruiter, but you've got clients, you've got candidates, you bring them together. As an owner, you now have marketing, technology, operations, team management. There's a lot more things you have to juggle. So, can you talk to me about what your experience of that has been as a business owner?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of going back to writing out the priorities based on where we're at for the week, and for the month and for the year. So first and foremost, like your company is not going to exist if you don't have clients that you are working searches on and collecting revenue for. So you kind of have to list out all of these different things that you're doing, but then make sure that you're working on what is most urgent and what is most important. So from a managing that standpoint, it's really kind of you when you're first getting started, you kind of have to understand where your blind spots are. Cause a lot of times as a new firm owner, you just don't know what you don't know. So for me, it's a matter of always seeking out information, always seeking out you know, mentors, coaches, like yourself. It's getting with people who have experience running a firm and being able to tell you where you're going to run into issues that you didn't even know existed. And once you have that understanding, putting it on your project management tool, whatever that may be for yourself, and then knocking it out when it's appropriate.
Amazing. I know that you're big on adding systems in order to tackle some of the work that you don't personally need to do. How much time per week do you actually invest creating those SOPs, creating those systems, you know, making your business run more like a well-oiled machine and being able to delegate a lot of those tasks out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. I would say, depending on if we're in a period of like rapid systemization, could be as much as 5 hours. If it's a regular week, maybe anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So for me, my firm right now, it's small. I have one VA, which again, shout out to Recruitment Coach for helping me go through that process. And so we're taking it one SOP at a time, or at least we have been. So with that, it probably took the first week when we were first getting things really ironed out probably took like 5 hours, but now, I mean, it's just plug and play. We don't really have to do anything. It's humming.
Love it. And I think that's a great way of breaking it down is you're not going to be able to systemize your company overnight, right?
Right.
But if we can, every week, we can create a new process or a new system, a new SOP in real time. And as you're training your team member, or even if as you're doing a task, you know that we're big fans of Loom for creating videos. So if you're doing something that is a repetitive task that somebody else could do, why not just switch on Loom and record yourself doing it and narrate what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the step by step? Because you have to do the task anyway, it has to get done. But by recording that video, you create the potential to be able to delegate that either now or some stage in the future to somebody else, so that you're not doing those recurring tasks that do not directly contribute to making placements. So, Alec, what is next for Alec Borlin?
That's an exciting question. So really, it's right now, um, at the time of this recording, I'm still running BGC Search, but we're in the process. There's a company, there's a financial consulting and recruiting firm in Pittsburgh, where I'm in Cleveland, so they're my neighbor. They're looking to expand into Cleveland, so we are in the conversations of them actually acquiring and swallowing up BGC Search, so where I can be the market director and launch Cleveland, their a Cleveland office of their company in Pittsburgh. So they're actually one of the fastest growing privately held companies in Pittsburgh. They are a firm that are made up of individuals like myself, where they are former public accountants, CPAs, and their specialty is really helping companies that need interim CFO, interim controller type of consultants. So for me, it's an area that I have a lot of interest in. It's the ability to grow another book of business. To this point, I've actually built 3 different recruiting desks, Mark. I've built Cleveland the first time I started in the industry. I built Phoenix when I got promoted and moved there. And then I built Cleveland again when I came back 2.5 years later. So I'm kind of just a builder at this point in my career. And that's something that I really like doing, which, it kind of makes sense within your program. I love working with you guys to build out these processes. I love taking things that are 0 to 1. So as of right now, I could be in a very different position once this podcast is actually released. So stay tuned, I guess.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations on your new role. That sounds exciting. And you're actually the second person I've interviewed on the podcast who's gone through like an acqui-hire type scenario where they were running a successful small firm and then were sort of recruited / acquired by a larger entity. So I guess if that's going to allow you to so you've kind of come full circle, right? You're now going to get to spend more of your time doing the part of the job, I guess, that you enjoy most and that you're excellent at. And so congratulations and good luck with that, Alec.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it should be an exciting time. It allows me to just focus on going out there and really solving the problems from a consulting basis. But then also, again, with my small role in the Recruiter CPA, it allows me to just have maybe some more of those conversations during the week. Like I said, I'm more of the sponsor in that regard, and in helping shape the vision of like what firm owners are dealing with and where they need to, look at potential solutions, the accounting firm that is. But most of my time would be, again, if this goes through, will be spent on really solving the CFO's problems that I already know here in Cleveland in just a little bit different of a way.
I love it. And by the way, we should say that you are also a speaker at our upcoming live summit in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so for more information about that, go to recruitmentcoach.com/summit. I'm really looking forward to finally meeting you in person, Alec.
Likewise, Mark. I can't wait for that. It's going to be an awesome time. If you guys are considering it, just do it. I've seen a lot of the different replays from past summits, and they are just, there's a ton of value in there, number one, but there's just something about being in a room full of people trying to accomplish the same goal and people who might have already accomplished your goal. So check it out. Shameless plug.
Thanks, Alec. All right.
Of course.
Well, thanks for being here. That was a lot of fun, and I'll see you soon.
Sounds good, Mark. Thanks for having me again.
Take care. Bye now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out some of my other episodes. You'll see 1 or 2 suggested episodes on the screen now.